All right, so this is good. This is entertaining. Deommodore Lenoir is already doing some talking against his favorite target, the Seattle Seahawks. And he's even digging deep to hurt their feelings. He's invoking Richard Sherman on the day that the 49ers have become betting favorites to pick up Jaire Alexander. Now, my main point is that Deommodore Lenoir talking this trash in Seattle's direction underscores the fact that I don't think that the 49ers need Jaire Alexander. I think that a lot of these betting odds are based on cap space, and the 49ers obviously have a lot of it, which means they can theoretically add players in the near term. But I think that their main thing is about getting younger, getting healthier, getting hungrier, and carrying cap space over. But since the main topic of the day is a star cornerback in Jaire Alexander, who the Packers plan to release. I mean, we'll see if that becomes official or if they're able to get a last-minute trade in. But since that's the main topic of the day, why don't we keep the topic on the cornerback position? So here's a series of screenshots. Deommodore Lenoir first takes the tweet from JSN, the second-year receiver from the Seattle Seahawks, who says he's not on the internet. And Deommodore Lenoir said, well, I've seen you plenty of time on the internet. You're lying in this case. He calls him a bum. And then here at the bottom, look at this shot at Geno Smith. Got that bum who threw it up to you up out of there, and you are next. So Geno Smith is gone, obviously. Deommodore Lenoir had some success against Geno while Geno was the quarterback of the Seahawks. They traded him down to the Raiders. Sam Darnold has replaced Geno Smith, and Deommodore Lenoir says that JSN is going to be packing his bags next. And then, to really twist the knife, Deommodore Lenoir says there's a reason that we smiled after this. It's him and Seahawks legend, also 49ers legend, Richard Sherman, smiling on the field at Seattle. I mean, there's an art form to talking trash, right? And if you're going to talk trash toward the Seattle Seahawks as a member of the 49ers, you might as well invoke Richard Sherman. It's almost like the rules say that you do have to invoke Richard Sherman. If you have that bullet, then you better fire it, right? I didn't write the rules, but that's how Seahawks 49ers trash talk works. Teleport back. It's 2025 now. Teleport back 10 years and tell me that you would think that Richard Sherman would be invoked on the 49ers side in 49ers Seahawks trash talk. If you tell me that you thought that would happen 10 years ago, I would confidently tell you that you're lying because you didn't know that would happen. That's how crazy the world is these days. Richard Sherman is now invoked on the 49ers side in San Francisco, Seattle trash talk, as Deommodore Lenoir did here. Anyway, that will lead our 49ers update. Demo talking some smack. It's part of Demo's personality. He's been doing it now for years. Got paid last year, so I'm assuming he's just going to keep on acting the way that he did to earn that contract. He's good enough to back this stuff up. He had better numbers last year, Deommodore Lenoir, than any of the cornerbacks selected to the Pro Bowl. And you know who also had to earn respect early in his career because he wasn't given that respect because he was a 5th-round draft pick? Richard Sherman. Guess who was one of Deommodore Lenoir's mentors in Los Angeles? Richard Sherman. Guess who also is a 5th-round pick? Sherman was a 5th-round pick. Deommodore Lenoir was also a 5th-round pick. So Demo has modeled so much of his personality on the field, like his on-field persona after Richard Sherman. Obviously, they're different types of players as far as the measurables go. Richard Sherman was 6'3". Deommodore Lenoir is not 6 feet, but it's so many times it is a heart and soul kind of game. Everybody in the NFL is fast. Everybody's athletically capable. If you've made it to this level, you've checked those boxes. Even Upton Stout, who's 5'8", 180, I think he's got the athleticism to work in the NFL. What's going to potentially give him a chance to really make a splash at this level is what's given Deommodore Lenoir the chance that he had to make a splash at this level, that gave Richard Sherman the chance to make a massive splash at this level. And that is that on-field passion, that desire, that dog in these players. And I think that it's obvious that Richard Sherman had it in him, and Deommodore Lenoir has it too. And one hallmark of both of these players is that they were not afraid to talk. Now, as we pivot to Jaire Alexander, if the 49ers gather that he's got this kind of desire, if he's got the Richard Sherman level fire burning within, if he's got the Deommodore Lenoir level fire burning within, of course they're going to be interested. But if they sense that that's not the case with Jaire Alexander, I know there have been some sketchy events with him. Last year, he went out for one of the coin tosses, even though he hadn't been voted as a team captain. He's obviously only played 14 games over the past 2 years. He's only played one full season over the past 4. So there are definitely some health issues here. Many would argue that Jaire Alexander's best football is behind him. But if the 49ers feel that those questions are answered in a way that would make them bullish on adding him, sure, they would be in these sweepstakes if he became available. But I am skeptical that he checks those boxes to John Lynch's liking. And B, I really think that the 49ers feel great about where their cornerback room is right now. I think it's one of the deepest spots on the entire team. We could even look at the 49ers roster and the depth chart here to illustrate exactly where they are at the cornerback position. It's safety that is a bigger problem for the 49ers, and I wouldn't be surprised if they added a veteran safety. But at corner, you've obviously got Lenoir. You have Renardo Green. We talked about Upton Stout. Now, that's where the battle is going to happen. Trey Brown, speaking of the Seattle Seahawks, he was a good corner when healthy for the Seahawks. He's healthy now. He's competing for the 49ers. It's basically Trey trying to show that he should be in on an outside cornerback spot in passing downs, and Upton Stout trying to show that he should be in at nickelback on 65 to 70% of snaps. Whichever of those two players, even though they're not in direct competition with one another, they're gunning for different spots. But whichever of those two players makes the best case, that's the player who's going to get the insertion into this trio of cornerbacks. So if it's Trey Brown who makes the best case, Deommodore Lenoir will move inside in nickel spots, just like he did last year. If it's Upton Stout who makes the best case, then Trey Brown will be depth, and it's going to be Upton Stout who's in on 65 to 70% of snaps, and Deommodore Lenoir will stay outside. Now, there's a dark horse, Darrell Luter Jr. We can't forget about him. And then there are other corners here. There are 4 other corners that I don't project to make the roster, but you never know. The veteran, Dallas Flowers, another veteran in Trey Avery, a rookie in Jacob Robinson, and a rookie who made the team through a tryout in Derek Canteen. All of this to say that the 49ers have a lot of bodies at that cornerback position. You look at them in practice and you're like, wow, there's energetic, fresh blood for San Francisco at that position. There are much, much bigger questions at the safety spot where Malik Mustafa has the torn ACL and Jaire Brown is coming off of the ankle surgery. Now, I know I just mentioned John Lynch, and right before I came onto the show, I was on the phone with United. I was booking a few flights because there was a little bit of a flight credit issue. I just have to relay this message to you guys, maybe to John Lynch if he's watching. John from United, the customer service representative, who's awesome. He's based in Tampa, and we started talking about the Niners, and he's a big Bucks fan. And as soon as he figured out who I was, he said, John Lynch, because he's in Tampa, he said, John Lynch is the class act of class acts. And he started talking about all that John Lynch did in the community in Tampa. And it was like a really cool conversation just to get that perspective from somebody on the Bucs side who lives out there. And he's been watching John Lynch from afar and obviously wishing John Lynch the best, even as a Tampa fan. I was talking about Baker Mayfield as well, but I just thought that was cool. I thought it was cool to hear from John and John Lynch, a class act who did a lot for the community in Tampa. That was just right before I started this live. I was on the phone with United, and sometimes those calls are like pulling teeth, and other times you meet pretty cool people over the phone and you start talking about football. We actually booked the flight for me to Tampa Bay for the 49ers against the Buccaneers. That was a small world moment. Anyway, we'll see who's at cornerback for the 49ers against Tampa Bay and Baker Mayfield when that does actually happen. Let's open this up to a 49ers Q&A. We got a quality update going today. Jaire Alexander news open today. 49ers, believe it or not, are betting favorites. I think they're up there at the top. Is it the Raiders? It might be the Raiders being the other team that's in on the sweepstakes. But I'm not saying the 49ers are in on the sweepstakes. I'm saying that the betting market seems to think they're in on the sweepstakes. I don't think that it particularly makes a whole lot of sense. I think the 49ers would really have to believe that Alexander has got a tremendous amount of good football left in the tank. And I think that the availability is the best availability, and he hadn't had a lot of it over the course of the past 4 seasons, the past 2 seasons especially. And the 49ers, again, this is a team that's trying to get younger, that's trying to get healthier, that's trying to get hungrier. And if you think that Jaire Alexander checks all of those boxes, you are in firm disagreement with the Green Bay Packers, who are planning to move on from him and are unwilling to pay him about $17 million in each of the next 2 seasons. But it's very worth talking about on this day filled with cornerback news, with Deommodore Lenoir talking his trash, and with the 49ers getting ready to wrap up this offseason program. Veteran minicamp, and then it is off into that offseason desert. Good 40 days or so away for San Francisco. All the players are going to have to stay in good shape. They're going to have to work on their craft, and then they're going to have to report the training camp, and they're going to have to be ready for, I think, a lot of battles around the entire 90-man roster. First question, will I ever visit Wales? Well, Lombardi herself is currently, and she's not in Wales, but she is in England right now. You might spot Lombardi herself at Heathrow Airport tomorrow. If you do, say hello to her. She'll be flying from Heathrow to Prague. She loves everything in your area. I don't know, 49er fan Wales. I don't know what your name is. I was about to refer to you by name, but I am sure that we will make it out to Wales at some point, because that is Margot's favorite part of the world. We'll just put it that way. Everything from, I mean, she loves Scotland too. I like Scotland as well, but hey, we went and saw Leeds last year. We saw the 49ers property over there in Leeds. They now own Leeds United. We saw the stadium, Elland Road. I cannot say that I've been to Wales, but I do want to make it very, very soon. It is apparently full of mountains and castles. I'm sure it's beautiful, and I can't wait to make it. We'll do a big 49ers show from Wales at some point. Steve says, don't dwell on cast-off. Stay with a plan to upgrade with youth. I think this is the most likely course of action for the 49ers. What confidence level does Mr. Lombardi have in Mr. Moody? You know what? I just observe and report, right? I like to just stick with the facts instead of feelings like confidence or lack of confidence. I think that if you just stick to this factually, Jake Moody was struggling big time to end last season. And it obviously was connected to the ankle injury. So we know that he's talent, but we know that this ankle injury had him all kinds of messed up. So you're going to have to make some sort of projection moving forward. Is he going to be able to overcome it, or is he not going to be able to overcome it? If you're the 49ers, you have to hedge your bets, which is why they've brought Greg Joseph in. Greg Joseph has done some good stuff in this league. A lot of game winners a couple years ago, including, what was it, a 62-yard or 61-yard game winner. So this is stiff competition for Jake Moody. This is not some rando. This is somebody who's booted through a 60-plus yard game winner. So let the chips fall where they may. Maybe Jake Moody comes out and dominates in the preseason. Confidence is back. And even if Greg Joseph is pretty good, Jake Moody's better, and then he doesn't look back. There have been kickers who have struggled early in their career, especially due to injuries, who have turned around to have nice NFL careers. In fact, Doug Bryan was the kicker the 49ers drafted, I think, in the 3rd round back in 1994. He was a rookie the last time the 49ers won the Super Bowl. They cut him in 1995. He ended up having a 10-year NFL career. You probably heard the name, Doug Bryan. So he wasn't good enough to stick with the 49ers at the start, but found his footing, pun intended, for a kicker, and ended up having a nice career. So the last thing the 49ers want to do is cut Jake Moody right now in the middle of the offseason, where it benefits nobody to cut Jake Moody, and see him turn around and harness his talent successfully with another team. You might as well try him out against somebody else, another accomplished kicker in Greg Joseph, and see where it goes. And I think that's the logical course of action for the 49ers. It doesn't really matter if I have confidence or I don't have confidence in Jake Moody. I think that the 49ers can actually let reality play out in front of them. Do I think that Sam Darnold regresses? I just think that there's a general misevaluation of Sam Darnold. I think people underrated him in 2023 when he was with the 49ers. I think he was much better than people gave him credit for. He easily, I thought, beat out Trey Lance. I didn't think that there was a particularly close battle between those two guys. People remembered the New York years and the Carolina years. They conveniently ignored the final 6 games that he had in Carolina in 2022, which were actually pretty efficient. And they just assumed that he was a really bad quarterback, the same one that was seeing ghosts in New York. So he was underrated then. I think Darnold actually became overrated last year. Minnesota went 14-3. But if you look at all the advanced metrics, and mainly QBR, because that's the one that tries to encompass everything, Sam Darnold finished number 14. He's right in the middle of the pack last year. I think that's who he is as a quarterback. I think he's not as bad as some people say, and he's not as good as people were trying to say last year with the Vikings going 14-3. Did not surprise me in the least bit that first playoff action for him was a little bit more of a struggle, right? And Matthew Stafford, the more experienced playoff quarterback, was able to much better manage that game. And the Rams went on to beat the Minnesota Vikings. So I'm not sure that Darnold's going to regress this year. I think he's going to be who he is, and that is a decent quarterback, but not somebody who's near Brock Purdy's level, not somebody who's in the top 10 of the NFL. And that's who Seattle is going to have to work with. That's who Deommodore Lenoir is going to face in this 2025 season. Delmar Dennis, hello to the San Diego area. I've been hearing and reading good things regarding Austin Pleasance. Would appreciate your insight. Thanks. Well, first, watch the video from earlier today. I put it up this morning. It is impossible to make a fair evaluation of anybody on either the offensive line or the defensive line based on practices in shorts at OTAs. So anybody trying to sell you something lofty, something, conclusive on Austin Pleasance is getting way ahead of themselves right now. It's just not honest commentary at this point. I think he's moving well, and I think that was something the 49ers were a little bit concerned with, but they wanted to give him a chance over the offseasons, whether he signed him, to see if he could develop some of those movement skills to fit into their system after he played decently well down the stretch run of last year. But until you actually put on pads in a violent sport, in a contact sport, and show that you can translate some of that movement ability into physical play, mano-a-mano battle, until that happens, you don't know where the offensive or defensive lineman is. So in the video earlier today, I said, we can evaluate the 49ers in the passing league sense, in the 7-on-7. Okay, this guy's throwing well, this guy's running good routes. We can evaluate the physical football part of this, and that's the part that offensive linemen are judged by. We can't do that until training camp. So I think Pleasance has set himself up well for training camp, but to make it sound like it's anything more than that is impossible. It literally is impossible. The pads aren't on yet. You cannot evaluate offensive linemen and defensive linemen with any sort of certainty at this point. You can make a few observations. Usually the extent of those is this guy is moving well. I mean, that's all I needed to see from Trent Williams when he came back to OTAs last week. Is he moving well? Okay, yes, he's moving great. It's a little bit lighter, probably going to be good for his body down the run of the season, but we didn't really get to see Trent Williams have to brace for contact, have to anchor, have to maul somebody. I know that he pancaked Sebastian Gutierrez, but that was more inadvertent. The point is that the offensive line is only going to be so involved at this time of the year. Let's buckle our seatbelts for training camp. It's way, way too early to make big time proclamations about Austin Pleasance. Although he is moving well, I will say that. And Chris Furster, the offensive line coach, is happy about that. Would I say that the Rams are the toughest team in the division? I would look out for Arizona. I think quietly they've had a really interesting offseason. They brought in some veterans, Hassan Reddick. They brought in Dalvin Tomlinson. That was a sneaky big pickup for them on the inside. They must really think that they're closer than the national media thinks they are. Because when you start picking up the kind of veterans that they did pick up, and I know there's a connection to Jonathan Gannon for sorry, they didn't pick up Hassan Reddick. They got Josh Sweat. I was thinking about the wrong Eagles defensive end, but they got Josh Sweat. They picked up Dalvin Tomlinson. But when you start picking up those types of veterans, I know a lot of it's the coaching connection because Jonathan Gannon was the coordinator of those guys back in Philadelphia. But a lot of it, too, is a belief that you're a few pieces away, that you're not 5 miles away, that you may be 500 yards away from making a true run at things. Whether or not Arizona is correct in their assessment of their team remains to be seen, but I think there's some real confidence coming out of Arizona, given some of the veteran signings that they made on that defense. And they've got a coach who knows how to coach defense. So then on the other side, it's always going to come down to Kyler Murray's consistency. And I don't think there's been enough of it so far in his NFL career. But I would look out for Arizona. I do obviously think that the Rams are probably the biggest threat to the 49ers, but it's not like they ran away with the division last year. Things could have gone very differently had Deebo Samuel caught Brock Purdy's crosser in that Thursday night football game and the 49ers had won. Like, things could have gone very differently had Jake Moody made the 55-yard kick, or had Brandon Ayuk not dropped the pass, or if Ronnie Bell had not allowed one to clang off of his face mask, a dime from Brock Purdy in week 3. I just say all this to illustrate how thin the margins in the division are. And I know the Rams defense matured last year, and I would expect it to be a force again after that maturation. But I also know that Matthew Stafford has gotten a year older, and he wasn't good last year. Played well in the playoff game, but Matthew Stafford was the number 18, number 19 QBR guy. The 49ers have the best quarterback in the division. There's not a question about that. They've got Brock Purdy entering his prime, playing as a top 7 guy when we look at QBR. He dropped down to number 7 last year. Everybody else in the division is middle of the pack at best when it comes to quarterback efficiency. So the 49ers have the advantage there. It's a question of, can they put together a full team? Because it seems that Arizona believes that they've got something cooking on both sides of the ball. LA obviously thinks that, coming off of the division win in the playoffs last year, beating the Minnesota Vikings. And Seattle, they might be on a treadmill, but who knows? Maybe that defense is taking another step for the Seahawks, and we'll see if Sam Darnold can provide an upgrade over Geno Smith. Papa J, with Sourdough Sam as his avatar, seems very happy about some of the stuff I've been saying recently. We got a shout out to Papa J. He's one of our best commenters. He's on here a lot. Josh asks, is Robinson's suspension confirmed? No, it is not. Who are the 49ers likely to see as their number 1 wide receiver group if and while Robinson's suspended? It's not confirmed. All we know is that he was arrested on suspicion of DUI in December, and that the league has a history of levying punishment for such arrests. We also know that Les Snead, the Rams GM, when he was asked about DeMarcus Robinson's future right ahead of free agency, said that the Rams were concerned that he would be suspended, and that was at least part of the reason why they did not attempt to re-sign him. So those two things led me to believe that it's very possible that he is suspended. Now we wait to see if that is indeed something that happens. If he is out, and if, say, it's 2 games or 3 games, here's a look at the wide receiver room. DeMarcus Robinson is shaded in teal as a free agent addition. Brandon Ayuk probably won't be available. I would think Pup at the start of the season. That's what I would assume for Brandon at the start of the season. Juwan Jennings, obviously, starter. Ricky Pearsall, I think he's probably healthy now. They're expecting him to be close to healthy now. They probably will sit him at the mini camp just for precautionary reasons, but I could take the injury shading off. It was just a hamstring tweak. So you'll have Jennings, you have Pearsall, and then if there's no Robinson and no Ayuk, then it's a battle between Jordan Watkins and Jacob Cowing, with Isaiah Nair and Tariq Owens also trying to make a case coming out of this part of the roster. So unless the 49ers sign somebody else, which is why, I think they've hosted Gabe Davis. He's expected to be healthy for the start of the year coming off the meniscus surgery. I think we cannot ignore the fact that guys like Keenan Allen and Amari Cooper are still available. The 49ers have now had OTAs to gauge where they are at the receiver position. They'll let this mini camp play out to finalize that gauge. And then they're going to have about 40 days, about a month, to decide if they're okay with the group as it stands heading into training camp. And if not, then they may add somebody else. If they start camp and 2 weeks in, somebody gets hurt, or they decide, hey, this is looking a little bit rough. Maybe Amari Cooper is still there. Maybe Gabe Davis is still there. Maybe that's when they make a move. But the 49ers are biding their time because I don't think that they have to be desperate at this point at that position. I think they've got some intriguing guys, and I think that there still is uncertainty regarding DeMarcus Robinson's suspension status that is encouraging the 49ers to take as much time as possible here. What do I think is the hottest camp spot on the 49ers offense and defense starting with training camp? Well, I've already said linebacker between D. Winters and Nick Martin is going to be the biggest battle on the defensive side of the ball. On the offensive side of the ball, I think receiver is tremendously fascinating just because we don't know how those permutations will all work out. I think Ben Barch has a strong hold on the left guard spot to start the season, so I don't think that will be as crazy. How about tight end 3? It's going to be Kittle and Luke Farrell at the top of the tight end room. Is Mason Pline going to find his way onto the 53? Is Ross Dwelley going to return and find his way onto the 53? There's Jake Tonjes. There's Braden Willis. It's not exactly a high-profile battle, but it will be a battle for the 49ers at that tight end spot. So why don't we say tight end and linebacker to answer that question? Do the 49ers consider Huff a rental? No, he's under contract for 2 years. That's not a rental. That's a long time in the NFL. He's under contract for 2025 and 2026. So you got 2 years of team control. That gives you real leverage and optionality this next offseason to potentially extend him if 2025 goes really well. He already has successful history with his coach, with Robert Saleh. Consider the fact that Bryce Huff was an undrafted free agent out of Memphis. It's not a highly touted pick, and he developed into what he did to make some money from the Philadelphia Eagles, but he developed into what he did under Robert Saleh. 49ers know this guy. 49ers were willing to make the trade with Philadelphia. They were able to get a good price, and part of that deal was the team control for the 2026 season, which I do think is very valuable for the 49ers. Because if this guy goes off and has 10 sacks, the price for 2026 of about $15 million is going to be a bargain. 49ers will happily take it. So that optionality has some real potential value for the 49ers. You opened up McKivitz as a competition with Pleasance at right tackle. So here's the thing about McKivitz. He's a lot better than you're giving him credit for. He was, I would say, middle of the pack last year. The data supports that too. He wasn't very good in 2023. I'll give you that. But in 2024, Colton McKivitz was even above average in some facets of the game. They were weaker on the interior line. Like Aaron Banks was worse relatively at left guard than Colton McKivitz was at right tackle last year. And Aaron Banks made $19 million a year from the Packers. So no, Austin Pleasant's not going to be competing with Colton McKivitz. Colton McKivitz is going to be the starting right tackle for the 49ers. I just want to make that loud and clear. What the 49ers need, though, is a swing tackle between Williams or after Williams and Colton McKivitz to be able to fill in for either of those two positions. And that's where Austin Pleasance has a true opportunity to make some noise. As Mike says, if Pleasance is the starting right tackle, the 49ers are in trouble. Trust me, you could do a whole lot worse than Colton McKivitz at right tackle. A lot of teams have much worse than Colton McKivitz at right tackle. The interior line, left guard, and center, I think, are much bigger question marks. Although, if we're to believe Chris Foerster, they got great play at the center position last year. I obviously do not hold his auspicious, optimistic appraisal of that particular situation, but it is worth noting right now, right? Because the 49ers are going to be grading things differently than PFF. Chris Foerster has a more trained eye than I do. He could be wrong in his opinion for all we know, but I will stay with my take that the interior line is the biggest point of concern for that 49ers offense when we're talking about trench play. Pedro asking, who's going to be the NASCAR package? Well, you're going to have Bosa. You're going to have Bryce Huff. Those are going to be your ends. And then you're going to move a couple ends into tackle. Michael Williams, he's already done a lot of that at Georgia, playing a lot on the inside at Georgia. I mean, different shades, different alignments, but they're very confident they can teach Michael the ropes. And then Yetur Gross-Matos, they signed him last year, and they already had him playing some of these interior alignments in 2024. They really like Yetur in that regard. So Yetur Gross-Matos on the inside for the 49ers. Foerster is absolutely wrong about Brendel. Alex Mack was better than them. That was my initial reaction was, wait, Weston Richburg was here when Foerster was. Foerster came in 2019. Weston Richburg was having a good season when he got hurt in 2019. So I said, okay, maybe he's not counting Weston because he got hurt in week 14 against the New Orleans Saints. But then I said, well, Alex Mack. It's Alex Mack. I don't care if it was his last year. He was still a top 5 pass protector. Like, it's Alex Mack. Like, Alex Mack is better than Jake Brendel. Now, I will say that Brendel really, really surprised people in a positive way. Surprised me in 2022. Like, he played really good football his first year taking over for Alex Mack. I personally, based on my read, watching this stuff, my read, quantifying this stuff, and you know, getting as much help as I can in quantifying it, I think that he has regressed. Chris Foerster apparently doesn't think so. We'll see where it goes in 2025. Do we expect the Shanahan scheme to adapt after a rough year for the scheme across the league? Well, I think all schemes, all coaches are adapting year to year, no matter what. Even if you have a good year, maybe especially when you have a good year, you need to be prepared to adapt. Because when you have a good year, everybody's going to be trying to study you over the course of the offseason to beat you. So you better stay a step ahead in that chess match or things are going to go downhill. So I think that the Shanahan adaptable scheme, and I say adaptable because I think it's the biggest hallmark of it. All these Shanahan coaches, they like these amorphous players who can play at multiple different positions. They all do it in slightly different ways because their personnel varies from team to team. But I think the reason the league, the scheme gives the league fits or has given the league fits, had given maybe, is because of that versatility, and it's hard to match up with. But defenses have become more versatile because of it. 49ers defense is a great example. And that's the ongoing chess match. Now the defenses are countering the offenses with more effectiveness, and the offenses have to do what they can to stay a step ahead. So, yes, it's evolve or die in the NFL. Leon gives stock up for McKivitz, stock down for Jake Brendel. I think that's how a lot of 49ers fans probably do feel. Do I see the 49ers trying to develop Tanner Mordecai into a Steve Bono type? Well, I've got a video coming out on Mac Jones and Tanner Mordecai. I mean, the 49ers, it was the 1990 season where they played all 3 quarterbacks. Well, they didn't play Joe. Joe was actually hurt that year, but they played Steve Young. And then Steve got hurt, and they brought in Steve Bono, and they were still a good team. They didn't make the playoffs because Atlanta completed a Hail Mary against them at Fulton County Stadium. But they got really good quarterback play out of both of the guys they used, out of Steve Young and Steve Bono. And it was like, wow, they're already spoiled, already floating in riches by having Joe Montana and Steve Young. And then that year was like, well, they have Joe Montana and Steve Young and Steve Bono. So in a perfect world, yes, you want a very competent number 3. Is that always going to be feasible? No. Do they like Tanner Mordecai enough to keep him around? Now he's got to prove that he belongs in that QB3 role. He's got to say, hey, carry a third quarterback because I'm good enough for this position. So you would love to develop him into a Steve Bono type, and you'd love to have depth at the most important position, but that is easier said than done. So we'll see. I think that I have a video coming out on this pretty soon. I think the Tanners look decent at OTAs. And again, training camp is the real proving grounds. Bono did wear number 13. He wore Brock Purdy's number, or Brock Purdy wears Steve Bono's number. A lot of people talking about Pleasance and Colby. Guys, I've made my prediction on Connor Colby. I think he's going to start at some point this season, but that doesn't mean I think he's going to be a week one guy that's starting all 17 games for the 49ers. It's probably going to be an injury situation that he's going to have to fill in, and there he's going to have a chance to show that he's come a long way in his development in a short amount of time from Iowa. And obviously Austin Pleasance is on this team too, but Pleasance has been with several different football teams. He hasn't even put on pads yet this offseason. We cannot say that this guy's been insanely impressive. He's moved well. That's about it, right? Like there just hasn't been that opportunity yet for somebody like Austin Pleasance. There hasn't been that opportunity yet for somebody like Connor Colby. So we cannot get ahead of ourselves and think that these two guys are going to be so good that the 49ers are going to be able to shuffle the entire line and move Dominic Pooney to a spot that he's only played during the spring game for Kansas in college. Like, center is not something that Dominic Pooney is all too familiar with. He might have taken some Senior Bowl snaps at center too. This is a pipe dream. This is probably not going to happen, right? Like, these are all lottery tickets. Some of them hit, most of them don't. Last year, Dominic Pooney hit. Is Connor Colby going to hit? I think they have got a good chance because of the system that he played in at Iowa, but it still might take a while. And then Austin Pleasance, yeah, I mean, that might even be a bigger lottery ticket than these other guys because he's already been with several teams and it hasn't worked out into him becoming a fixture. So don't bite off too much more than you could chew when it comes to expectations about developing the offensive line, because it's really, really hard to do in this league. The ultimate key is to get the run game going to help the pass blocking. Yes. That's how the Shanahan scheme works. You play the game on your terms. You block downhill. You don't block uphill. All right, everybody, thanks for watching. We got the Deommodore Lenoir trash talk in. We talked a lot about Jaire Alexander. It's time for me to go. Thanks for joining. We'll talk to you very soon. Hit that sub button. See you guys.